I got into my husband's car and found a tube of personal lubricant in the glove compartment. I didn't say a word. I just secretly replaced it with industrial super glue. And what happened next forced our neighbors to make an emergency call. The fire department. Asterisk, I'm so glad you're here. If you're watching this video, please like and subscribe to my channel and tell me in the comments where you're listening to my story of revenge from. I want to know how far it's traveled. Asterisk, I sat at the kitchen table. The silence in the house was as thick as morning fog. A silence that had become a constant, unwelcome guest. The old clock on the wall, a wedding gift from my late mother, ticked with a relentless accusatory rhythm. Each beat a painful reminder of a life I was beginning to suspect was a beautiful, meticulously crafted lie. Asterisk, my husband Julian had just returned from one of his countless business dinners. He looked not merely exhausted, but haunted, as if he carried the weight of a secret too heavy to bear. His face was a map of fatigue and guilt, lines etched around his eyes and mouth that had never been there before. He tossed his jacket on the sofa with a weariness that felt performative, loosened his tie as if it were a noose he was desperate to escape, and collapsed onto the bed, the familiar springs groaning under his weight, without even bothering to shower. Asterisk. The faint scent of his expensive cologne hung in the air, but it was mixed with a new alien fragrance, a sweet floral perfume that felt like an intrusion, a brazen confession from a life I didn't know he was living. A few minutes later, the gentle hum of his snoring filled the house, a sound that once brought me comfort, but now felt like a mocking lullaby. A lullaby for a fool. Asterisk, I got up, moving with a quiet, practiced grace of a wife of 40 years, and began to tidy up the mess he'd left in the living room. His jacket, his wallet, his cell phone, his old laptop. The phone screen was still on, a new email glowing like a sinister omen. I frowned. Julian never used email. He always said, Juliet, all this tech stuff is too complicated. I'd rather just make a call. Asterisk, but now, an email. It was right there in plain sight. A digital ghost from a life I didn't know he was leading. Out of a morbid curiosity that felt both wrong and necessary, I opened it. The message was short, a mere handful of words that would shatter my world. You were incredible tonight, Dad. It was followed by a red heart, a symbol of affection that pierced my own heart with a cold, sharp ache. Asterisk. I froze, as if someone had slapped me. The digital world, a cruel mirror reflecting a truth I was too terrified to see. Dad. The word echoed in my mind. Who was calling him that? And in such an intimate, affectionate tone? I swiped down, my thumb trembling, looking for more clues. But there was nothing. It's a strange email address, a jumble of meaningless characters that offered no answers, only more questions. Asterisk, a shiver ran through me, not from cold, but from a profound, bone-deep fear. It felt like a cold wind coming in through a crack in the door of my life, revealing a secret chamber I never knew existed. I glanced at the bedroom and saw Julian turn over with a sputtering snore, his face still and peaceful. A stark and infuriating contrast to the storm raging inside me. Asterisk, my heart pounded like a thief's, a frantic, guilty beat. I quickly put the phone back, my hand shaking so much I almost dropped it. I continued cleaning up, my movements now mechanical, robotic. I gathered his dirty clothes to take to the laundry. As I checked his pant pockets, I felt a folded piece of paper, crisp and new. Asterisk, it was a receipt from a fancy steakhouse in San Antonio, dated that very night. I frowned. San Antonio? He had told me he was meeting his partners in Dallas. A tiny bitter laugh escaped my lips. Julian hated driving to Dallas, San Antonio. On the other hand, was where his mother had lived before she passed away. He had fond memories there, a fact he had often reminded me of. Asterisk, but who had he had dinner with in San Antonio while lying to me about being in Dallas? The receipt showed a party of two, a bottle of expensive Cabernet Sauvignon, a wine he had bought me for our 10th anniversary, a wine I had never forgotten, and main courses of filet and pasta. I tried to remember the last time Julian took me to a place like that. Maybe 10 years ago when I opened my first bakery. Asterisk, it was a memory etched in my mind. The flickering candlelight, his proud smile, the way he toasted my success. Now that memory, was a lie. A faded photograph in a scrapbook of deceit. I took out my own phone and with a silent, determined resolve, snapped a picture of the receipt and the email. Asterisk, I didn't want to believe it. But a woman's intuition, a wife of 40 years' intuition, is a deep primal knowing. Something was going on, and I had to find out what it was. My hands were trembling, not just with anger, but with a deep existential dread. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, about to witness the spectacular collapse of my entire life. Asterisk, I went to the garage. Julian's old SUV was still warm, the air thick with the smell of gasoline and that faint sweet perfume from his clothes. I opened the door, a small cold dread gripping my stomach. I turned on my flashlight and checked every corner of the driver's seat. There was nothing out of the ordinary, just some loose change and an empty water bottle. Asterisk, but as I reached into the passenger side glove box, my fingers brushed against something plastic and slippery. I pulled it out and my heart almost stopped. A tube of used personal lubricant with dried residue on the cap. A sticky, damning piece of evidence. I stood there in the dark garage, staring at it as if it were a dirty secret, a tangible manifestation of my worst fears. Asterisk, Julian and I hadn't been intimate in years. He always said he was tired. That age had sapped his desire. So, what was this lubricant for? The question echoed in my mind, each syllable a hammer blow to my fragile reality. I felt paralyzed, but kept a clear head, a survival instinct kicking in. Asterisk, I put it back exactly where I'd found it. I wiped my hands with a napkin, scrubbing them raw, as if I were afraid the betrayal would leave a permanent mark on my skin. I continued searching, this time more carefully, more methodically, under the back seat. I found some crumpled napkins, soaked in a sweet floral perfume that wasn't a Manzan, wasn't my soft, familiar rose fragrance. The scent was alien, defiant, a loud, vulgar shout of infidelity in the quiet sanctuary of our garage. I took photos of everything, the lubricant, the napkins, as if I could capture the scent in an image. I closed the car and went back inside, the weight of the evidence pressing down on me, heavier than any flour sack I had ever lifted. Asterisk, I sat at the kitchen table, my hands trembling uncontrollably as I picked up Julian's phone again. By this point, I was almost certain he was cheating on me. I checked his messages, but there were only work chats, cold and dry, like a desert landscape. His inbox was empty, except for that one strange email. Asterisk, I checked the sent and draft folders. Nothing. Everything was too clean. Too perfect. Suspiciously so, as if he had erased every trace of his deception. A master of lies, I thought bitterly. My rage was now a cold, hard stone in my chest, and a new, more dangerous emotion began to stir within me. A desire for truth, a need to expose the lie. No matter the cost. Asterisk, the next morning, just as the sun rose and the soft light filtered through the window curtains, I was already awake, a ghost in my own house. The image of the lubricant, the restaurant receipt. And that email wouldn't stop swirling in my head, a venomous carousel of doubt. I stood in the kitchen, my hands busy, but my mind a frantic whirlwind. Asterisk, I made a simple breakfast, 2 fried eggs, some toast, and a cup of the strong black coffee Julian liked. I had barely slept all night. Julian came down looking tired, his hair a mess, and his eyes still groggy. He sat at the table, grabbed his coffee cup, took a sip, and set it down half full. Asterisk, I have an important meeting today, he said in a husky voice, a rehearsed line he'd used countless times before. Without looking me in the eye, I'm sure I'll be home late. He was so good at this. I thought, the easy lies, the casual tone, it made my blood run cold. Asterisk, I nodded with a strained smile, though all I wanted to do was scream. Where is the meeting? With whom? In San Antonio again? But I held back, my rage a silent fire, and simply replied, all right, be careful. He got up, gave me a light pat on the shoulder, a gesture that felt more like an afterthought than a sign of affection, and left. Asterisk, the door closed, leaving the kitchen in silence, and me with a suspicion that was growing into a monstrous certainty. I cleared the table and washed the dishes one by one. The rhythm of the task a small anchor in the storm of my emotions. I couldn't just sit there inventing theories. I needed the truth. Hard evidence. Asterisk, I picked up my phone and looked for the number 4. Mrs. Miller, a friend from years ago who had helped me so much when I first opened the bakery. She had once told me about a good private investigator who specialized in infidelity cases. Juliet, if you ever need it, I can give you Thomas's number, she had said. He's very discreet and reliable. Asterisk, I never thought I would need to call him, but now I had no other choice. I dialed her number, my voice trembling, each ring a drumbeat of my mounting anxiety. Hello, Mrs. Miller? Can you help me get in touch with Thomas? I need him, asterisk. She was silent for a few seconds, a pause that spoke volumes, before answering. Juliet, what's going on? Did Julian do something? I sighed, not wanting to get into the details over the phone. My pride bruised and raw. I just need to know the truth. Can you help me?